All right, let's dive into one of the most intense, passionate, and frankly, mind-bending love poems ever written, John Donne's The Ecstasy. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's just start with a huge question. What even is the language of love? It's something we've all thought about, and believe it or not, a poet from the 1600s is about to give us an answer that is so complex and so beautiful, it's just something else.
Okay, so the poem kicks off in this moment of almost perfect silence and stillness. Let's take a look at how Donne builds this tiny, private world for these two lovers, a world that's as physical as it is spiritual.
Right away, Donne just drops us into this incredibly lush, almost living landscape. The lovers are sitting on a pregnant bank, which is such a powerful image, right? It's bursting with life, with potential. It feels like nature itself is just holding its breath, watching them. And they sit there, one another's best. For them, in this moment, they are a complete and total universe unto themselves.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. Look at how their physical connection is way more than just touching. Their hands aren't just held, they're firmly cemented, like they're unbreakable. And then this idea of I-beams, you have to remember, back then, people thought vision was literally beams shooting out of your eyes. So here, their I-beams are twisted together, threaded onto a single string. It's this wild, intense image of two people starting to physically merge into one. And this right here, this is the central puzzle of the poem. On the outside, they're completely motionless, like sepulchral statues, like the stone carvings on a tomb, totally still. But on the inside, it's a whole different story. Their souls are out there, between their bodies, having this intense, complex negotiation. It's an incredible contrast.
So this negotiation between their souls, we have to be clear about this. For Donne, this isn't just a pretty metaphor. He means it literally. And that leads us right to the heart of the poem, the ecstasy itself.
Yeah, the title isn't just about a feeling of happiness. For Donne, ecstasy is a literal physical event. It means to stand outside oneself. Their souls have actually left their bodies and are communicating directly. In his view, this out-of-body experience is the only way they can get to a totally pure, unfiltered understanding of each other.
Then Donne does this kind of cool thing. He imagines a third person is there, not just any random person, but someone who's already been refined by love, someone who actually gets this silent soul's language. And this person wouldn't just be watching, they'd be changed by it. They'd take a new concoction, that's an alchemy term, and leave far purer. That's how powerful this spiritual union is.
Okay, so this whole soul-to-soul conversation, it leads the lovers to this absolutely massive breakthrough about what their love is really all about.
In this ecstatic state, everything suddenly becomes crystal clear. It unperplexes them. I just love that word. And what's the very first thing they figure out? They realize, wait a minute, the thing that brought us together, it wasn't sex. It was something way, way deeper.
And the discovery gets even bigger. They realize that their love has literally, and I mean literally, mixed their two individual souls together to create something brand new. A single, abler soul. Think about that. A soul that's stronger, more capable than either of them was alone. It's a total fusion that fixes what Donne calls the defects of loneliness. This new thing they've created is a whole different level of being.
And he uses this absolutely amazing word to describe this process, a word he might have actually invented, interanimates. It just means they mutually breathe life into each other. What a beautiful concept, right? It's not one person giving and one taking. They're actively creating life in one another.
And here it is, right in the text. This is that moment of creation. This is where two become one and conquer that fundamental human fear of being alone. This aber soul that just flows from their union is the ultimate cure for isolation. It's a perfect spiritual connection. So, we're at the absolute peak of spiritual purity, right? It doesn't get much more profound than this. And then, bam! Donne pulls a complete 180 and flips the entire argument of the poem on its head.
The speaker asks this question that just stops you in your tracks. Our bodies, why do we forbear? Basically, if our souls are so perfectly connected, why are we just sitting here ignoring our bodies? After this whole poem celebrating a love beyond the physical, he just slams on the brakes and brings us crashing right back down to earth.
His new argument is this. The body isn't the soul's enemy, it's its partner. It's its vehicle. He uses this old-school model of the universe to explain it. Think of the soul as the intelligence, the divine power that makes a planet move. But that power needs the actual physical planet, the sphere, to do anything. A soul without a body is just pure potential, with no way to act in the world. So the body gets this huge thank you. It's not dross, waste material. No, he says it's the ally. That's the metal you mix with another to make it stronger, like tin with copper to make bronze. The body actually makes the pure soul stronger, better equipped for the real world. It's an absolutely essential partner.
So, what's the big finale? Why do they have to go back to their bodies? Well, Donne's final argument is, honestly, a showstopper.
And check out this metaphor, it's just brilliant. He says a soul without a body is like a great prince in prison. I mean, think about that. A prince has all this power, all this authority, but if he's locked in a dungeon where he can't see or speak to anyone, he's totally powerless. That's the soul without the body's senses. It's trapped.
And that's exactly why they have to return. Their pure souls need to come back down to earth and get back into their physical senses. Why? Because that allows them to actually express all that spiritual love in a physical way. And by doing that, their perfect love becomes visible to the rest of the world. It's not just for them anymore. Their love becomes a lesson for everyone else to read. And this brings us to the poem's absolutely stunning conclusion. Love's mysteries and souls do grow, but yet the body is his book. Wow. So love is born in the soul, for sure. But the body? The body is the book where that whole amazing story is written down for the rest of us to see and understand. It's this radical, beautiful idea that spirit and flesh aren't enemies. They complete each other. So Donne leaves us wrestling with this huge idea. Maybe the highest, most spiritual truths actually need a physical form to be real. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world of texts and DMs and digital everything, how much do we still need the physical body, the real presence of another person, to make our deepest feelings truly understood?
All right, today we are jumping headfirst into what is, no joke, one of the most passionate, brainy, and just plain argumentative love poems ever written. We're talking about John Donne's The Canonization. And what's so wild about this poem is how it kicks off with this furious demand to just be left alone, and then, by the end, it's created a whole new religion with the lovers as its saints. It's an incredible journey.
So, here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to walk through the whole thing, stanza by stanza, really breaking down its powerful 5-part argument. We'll see how Donne starts by defending his love, then defines it with these absolutely mind-blowing metaphors, and finally, he just elevates it to something divine. And stick around, because at the end, we'll connect it all back to some of his other big ideas.
Okay, let's get into it. The poem doesn't ease you in, not at all. It kicks off with a shout, not a whisper. The speaker is right on the attack, He's confronting this unnamed critic. Could be a friend, maybe a rival at court, who knows? But what's clear is this person does not approve of this all-consuming love affair.
I mean, that opening line is just stunning in how blunt it is, right? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. You can almost hear the rhythm of it. It's so forceful and uneven, just like real angry speech. And then he gets sarcastic. He gives this whole list of his own flaws for the critic to pick on instead. Go on, make fun of my bad health, my gray hairs, the fact that I'm broke. The message is crystal clear. Go after me for anything else, just leave my love out of it.
So right here, from the get-go, Donne draws a line in the sand. It's a classic setup. On one side, you've got the public world, all about ambition, money, status, climbing the ladder at court, sucking up to the king. And on the other side, you've got this intensely private, super important world of the two lovers. The speaker is basically saying, look, you can have the whole public sphere. Just give me this one small private kingdom. All right, so moving into the second stanza, the argument keeps building, but the tone, it does a complete 180. After that fiery, explosive opening, the speaker suddenly gets all cool and logical. It's like he's putting on a lawyer's hat and mounting this almost legal-style defense of his love.
And the way he does it is just brilliant. He hits his critic with a whole string of rhetorical questions. The kind you ask to make a point, not to get an answer. He takes all those standard, totally over-the-top cliches from love poetry, my sighs caused a storm, my tears flooded a river, and he just skeers them with this deadpan logic. It's like, okay, really, have my sighs actually sunk any ships? Have my tears really flooded anyone's farm?
And the answer, obviously, is a big, fat no. His whole point is that their love is this completely self-contained bubble. The real world, business, wars, all that stuff, it just keeps chugging along completely unaffected.
Their love is its own little world that does absolutely zero harm to the big world outside.
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. In the third stanza, the poem takes a huge turn. He's finished defending his love. Now he's going to define it. And to do this, he pulls out a classic tool from the metaphysical poet's toolbox, something called a conceit. Now, a conceit is basically a really elaborate, extended, and usually pretty surprising metaphor that connects two things you would never think to put together.
He kind of pretends to be indifferent at first, right? He says, "Call us what you will." But it's a total fake out, because right after that, he starts supplying his own list of metaphors, and each one gets bigger and more significant, all to explain the totally mysterious nature of their love.
So, first up, he calls them flies. Now, that might sound not great, but he's really thinking more like moths, drawn to a candle flame. It's all about a love that might be short, but it is incredibly intense. Their whole existence is just defined and consumed by that fire of passion.
Then he flips the script. They go from being the moths drawn to the flame to being the tapers, the candles themselves. See the difference? They're not just passive victims of passion anymore. Now they are the source of the light. They're burning together, willingly, consuming themselves at their own cost, and finding this incredible glory in that mutual sacrifice.
And then the metaphor shifts again, this time to the eagle and the dove. This is a classic fusion of opposites, right? You've got the eagle's power and majesty, and the dove's peace and gentleness. The idea is that in their love, these totally distinct energies, you could say masculine and feminine, they combine into one single, perfect, harmonious being.
And all of this builds to the stanza's final, just jaw-droppingly brilliant metaphor, the phoenix. You know the one, the mythical bird that's both male and female. There's only one of it in the whole world. It dies in a fire that it makes itself, only to be reborn from its own ashes. I mean, could there be a more perfect symbol for these lovers? As Donne says, we two being one are it. They literally merge into one, and through this death of passion, they are reborn. They achieve immortality.
So, this really powerful idea of dying and rising again, of finding immortality through love, well, that leads us straight into the fourth stanza and what is really the central argument of the whole poem, the idea that their love is going to make them saints. Now, the speaker is realistic here. He gets it. He admits that, in the grand scheme of history, they might not be important enough for the official history books or for big, fancy funerals. Their legend, as he calls it, probably isn't going to make it into tombs and hearses or the official chronicles.
But here's the thing. That kind of worldly fame doesn't matter one bit. He sets up this amazing contrast between those temporary worldly monuments, tombs, funerals, history books, and the absolutely eternal legacy that you get from poetry. He says the lovers will have something way more enduring. They'll have verse. Their memory won't be carved on some cold tombstone. It'll live forever in the pretty rooms of a sonnet.
And it's these poems, which he calls hymns, that will get everyone to approve them as canonized for love. This is the absolute core of the poem. To canonize someone is the official church act of making them a saint. But, and this is the genius part, it's not the church that's doing it here. No, it's love itself with a capital L that becomes the divine power that makes them holy.
And that brings us to the final stanza, where the whole argument just reaches this magnificent peak. The speaker flashes forward and imagines a future where their sainthood is just a given. It's a fact. And future generations of lovers will literally pray to them.
He even writes out the prayer that these future lovers will say. And the language, it's just incredible. They'll be asking these new saints, these lovers who somehow managed to shrink the whole world's soul and fit it into the reflection of their eyes. They'll be asking them to beg from above a pattern of your love.
So think about that journey. Their private, criticized love, what he called a quiet hermitage, has now become this universal model for everyone. Their deeply personal experience has been transformed into the perfect pattern for all true love to follow. It's amazing. They've basically founded a whole new religion, and they are its first saints. Okay, so to really fully appreciate the genius of this poem, it helps to zoom out a little and see how these huge ideas like rebirth or the idea of something small containing something huge are just central to how Donne thought about everything, not just in his poetry, but in his famous sermons too.
I mean, you look at his famous sermon, Death's Duel, and he talks about our whole life being a series of metaphorical deaths as we go through different stages, all pointing toward the final resurrection. That's exactly what the lovers do in the phoenix metaphor, right? They die and rise the same. And what about that idea of their eyes containing the whole world? Well, in another poem, An Anatomy of the World, he basically argues that one person's death has made the entire universe fall apart. For Donne, the personal and the cosmic were always connected. One tiny, intense human experience could literally contain the entire universe.
And that, right there, is the lasting power of the canonization. John Donne takes what starts as this really personal, defensive argument and just blows it up into a universal, almost religious model. He takes human love and makes it sacred, makes it eternal, and he leaves us with this really provocative question to think about. What in your life, in your own private world, is so powerful, so central to who you are, that you would fight to have it called holy?
All right, today we're going to break down what might be one of the cleverest, most audacious, and downright witty poems ever written. Seriously.
Mark, but this Flea and Mark in this, it all starts with this simple command, right? The 17th century poet John Donne is just asking his beloved to look at a bug, a tiny insect.
So the big question is, how on earth does this tiny little insect become a masterclass in persuasion? Let's break it down and see exactly how Donne spins this whole thing into an unforgettable argument for love.
Okay, first things first, we gotta understand the mind behind the madness here. We're talking about John Donne, a guy who was just this wild mix of, well, piety and lust, a real poetic genius.
So Donne was an absolute master of something called the metaphysical conceit. And what is that? Well, it's basically an extended, super elaborate, and often totally surprising comparison between two things that seem to have nothing in common. And the Flea, it has maybe the most famous example in all of English literature. He takes a common pest and turns it into this huge, complex symbol. It's brilliant.
All right, let's jump into the first stanza and see how the speaker starts to build this incredible argument. Okay, so here's the opening shot. The speaker points out that this flea has bitten both of them. And this is the crucial part. You have to remember, back in the 17th century, blood was seen as a key part of, well, the mingling of bodies during sex. So when he says their blood is now mixed inside this flea, he's making a very specific and pretty provocative point.
You see what he's doing, right? He's saying, look, this flea has already created a physical union between us. And this makes her refusal to sleep with him seem, well, kind of like a huge overreaction. He's trying to frame her saying no as completely illogical.
And then he follows up with this zinger. He says, this little mingling of our blood inside the flea, it's completely innocent. There's no sin, no shame, and no loss of her virginity, her maidenhead. He's slowly building this case that the other physical union he wants is just as harmless. So clever.
And this part, this just perfectly captures his witty frustration. He's complaining that the flea gets to be all pampered and swell with their combined blood, getting all this intimacy without any of the work of courtship. Meanwhile, he's still being shut down. You can almost hear the sigh in his voice.
Okay, so now things really start to escalate. She's clearly not buying his whole argument till she moves to kill the flea. And this is where the speaker just dramatically raises the stakes.
He practically begs her, oh, stay, don't kill it. And look at how he elevates this thing. It's not just a bug anymore. It's a holy symbol of their union. He's claiming that inside this insect, they are more than married. Wow. Just wow.
Look at how the conceit, that big comparison, just explodes here. The flea isn't just a mix of their blood now. No, it's their marriage bed. It's their sacred marriage temple. It's this tiny, private world where they're joined together, totally safe from their disapproving parents or anyone else. It's just wild. So he lays this perfect logical trap for her. He argues that if she kills this flea, she's committing a triple sin. It's murder because she's killing the innocent flea. It's suicide because her blood is in there. And it's sacrilege because she'd be desecrating their marriage temple. It is completely over the top, but it's an absolutely brilliant way to protect his central metaphor.
All right, let's get to the final stanza. This is where the whole drama reaches its climax and we get the resolution.
And then she just kills it. In this fantastic, defiant moment, she totally ignores his super elaborate, sacred argument and just squashes the flea. And just like that, the marriage temple is gone.
And the speaker's reaction is just pure mock horror. Cruel and sudden, he dramatically accuses her of staining her nail with the blood of innocence.
He's acting like she actually did it, like she committed the exact triple sin he warned her about.
But she's got a counter-argument. She basically triumphs, right? She points out, hey, look, the flea is dead. Are you feeling any weaker? 'Cause I'm not. She's showing him that his grand fears were totally overblown, completely false. At this point, it really seems like she's won the debate.
But, and this is where the true genius of the poem comes out, you're looking at his final move right here. He doesn't admit defeat, oh no. Instead, he takes her own logic and flips it right back on her. He completely agrees with her. He basically says, you know what? You're right. The flea's death was nothing. Therefore, he says, you should learn from this, just how false your fears are. The amount of honor you think you'll lose by sleeping with me, it's going to be just as tiny, just as insignificant as the life that was lost when you killed that flea. It's just a stunning rhetorical judo flip. Unbelievable. So after all of that, that incredible display of verbal acrobatics, what's the lasting impact of this poem? Why are we still talking about it?
Well, it really endures as this timeless monument to pure wit. It's not really about seduction, it's about the absolute joy of a brilliant argument. It shows how a truly creative mind can take the most trivial, everyday thing and turn it into this incredibly powerful case. And I think it just leaves you wondering, It makes you think about the power of persuasion in our own lives and really about the kind of genius it takes to look at the world and see a marriage temple where the rest of us, we just see a flea.